Welcome to All Basket Hangout. I'm Geralf and this is Vandil. And today we're going to be talking about money.
Yes, and not about, fantasy money and how it represents or tells what it tells about our actual money usage.
What it tells about our actual
Yeah,
spending habits.
that's what I was gonna talk about.
Yeah. So we've been talking a lot about money and spending and all sort of these personality traits and what they tell about us. And one interesting thought we had was that, games are a simulation. So of course, games are also, they're not just simulation, they're also fantasy. So they don't necessarily represent the way that we would, or what we would do in real life, of course. There's games like Grand Theft Auto where you do all sort of horrible things in the game, but that doesn't mean that you go and do those things in real life. But at the same time, maybe the way that you spend money in video games may give some sort of insight into how you use money in real life. Or if not, then maybe it'll give you some insight on how you should use money in real life. Because that's another thing. Because, as I mentioned, games are a simulation, and they're sort of, if you play any sort of game where you're supposed to become rich by some means, whether it's like an RPG or some sort of simulation game where, like a Port Royale, where you're managing an entire empire of ships and fleets and whatever, then you're supposed to be doing things that make you more and more money, and if you don't, then it's a game over at some point.
Yeah, I can tell you right now, based on my experience playing the original Zoo Tycoon with the expansion packs, that I'm there for the long game. I'm very careful about spending the money, and I really want to make sure that I never go to the minus, to the negative numbers with my financials. And I really feel like that's what I am in my real life too. Someone that just is very scared of any risks and just wants to play this very long and exhaustive game where you just get a bit of money and grab onto it as hard as possible. And if you want to make more money, I want to make more money, I really want to make 100% sure that it's gonna make me more money. The investment would make me money, and that's why my Zoo Tycoon gaming sessions have always been making this little bit of park and put in establishments, hot dog stands, and anything that brings me money into there, and be very careful. Now we sit on this for 5 years of gameplay time, however many hours that is, and just rake up that money slowly. And when you have enough money, then I can buy that big thing and you put that in the park.
Yeah.
So I'm this accumulator, or
I'd say a hoarder.
Type of person who really wants to have that money before. I really don't want to take a loan to buy anything.
Yeah. I mean, I guess there's a lot of games. Well, this is actually something that I really like when it comes to games and spending money, because if you think about most games, whether they're simulations or whether they're simulations where money is or finances is an essential part, or whether it's a game where finances isn't really an essential part, like RPGs. I mean, of course, you do have to manage money all the time in RPGs as well, but it's not like the point of the game to have these financial systems like loans and stuff like that. But if especially in those games, the way you usually move forward in those games is specifically that you don't start with this idea that, okay, there's something that I want, I'm going to take a loan and I'm going to buy that, and then I'm going to use that to be better or do better or make money. Instead, if there's a sword or something that you want to buy for your character, you first need to go somewhere and do enough stuff to get that money, and then you can buy the sword. And that's sort of, I guess, that's the sort of idea that games have really brought to my mind as well, is that in the same way I don't really like loans in real life or in games or anywhere, because that's sort of the mentality that I also have, that it's you need to earn that money first and then you use it to buy something, and now you're somehow better or more well off or something. But at the same time, I do feel it sort of, because you've gotten more interested in all this trading market and stuff like that, and you found out about all these methods like leveraging and stuff like that. So that's something that my brain has really hard time grasping, because of the way that I've sort of all the examples in my life, especially in games, I've seen that's the good way to handle money. That's the way you're not going to go broke, in that you get money and then you buy something. And then there's like the bad sides that I've seen with people like my father, who really wasn't really good with money, and the way he was handling getting loans. It just seems like a really, really bad idea.
Yeah, that actually brings up that other than the strategy or simulation games where you build a city, those have this loan or leverage aspect as well, that you can get some kind of loan and then build something with it. But other than that, there's not really any games that harness this loan part of this money using this money financial side of managing your money, because loans can be very beneficial if you put it to good use. But hearing from you that you've learned that if you want something, you have to really work hard for it. You have to get that money by working some way, accumulate it some way, and that involves beating the monsters and getting their money or getting the items, weapons and such, and then selling those for the money. That's an honest work, kind of. But
Yeah.
the loan, taking a loan or using a credit is very absent in games. And one would say that's a good thing, that it's not there to teach us that credit is good, yes. But on the other hand, games are these, well, every game is kind of a simulation or this safe place where you can try out things without getting the consequences in real life. So I'm now thinking maybe there should be more games that bring out this using credits or using this credit or some kind of loan system to make you just having that there, and player sees it and, well, I tried this and oh no, I'm broke now. I used it to buy something X that didn't really help me in any way.
Yeah, I think actually if we think about, a loan is something that, as we mentioned...
No, I take that back. Not an axe, a decal for your house in your imaginary Skyrim house. You bought a nice poster in your wall with that loan. That's a bad thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But as I actually, that's the point that I wanted to make, that, a loan, it can be like, you can use it as a leverage if you're sort of, to say, I guess intelligent is the wrong word. I'd say sneaky. If you're sneaky, then you have a really good plan and you know how to execute it, and you just need a lot of money for it, and that's why you take a loan. So that's the good part of loans. But the problem is that, anybody can basically get a loan in real life, and not everybody is sneaky or intelligent enough to use that loan as a leverage. And instead, that's what they do. Instead of buying that axe that they can use to now defeat monsters more easily, metaphorically speaking, they buy the decal for their house, and that's, it looks nice, but it's not going to improve you in any way. And that's why now you're just in debt. You're not making more money. You're not any better off.
I'm thinking about this in RPGs it's very traditional that the money or the cost of items is used to gatekeep you from getting the best stuff before you've worked enough for that stuff. But what if you had this option to get the loan and get that best axe in the game from the very beginning? One would say that or you could kill the monsters a lot faster. You get a lot faster, or you get money a lot faster from slaying the monsters. So you've given that kind of leverage by buying the best kind of items for yourself in the beginning.
And I guess
pretty interesting.
Yeah, but I guess there can be, like, if the game makers want to make a drawback on that, because that goes with the real life as well, in that, let's say you take a loan and you start a company and you go, okay, I'm gonna get the best guys into this company and I'm going to pay them millions. Then the problem is that you have to take this insane loan and you have to pay a lot of money, and now, even though you have the best guys, you're not getting anything out that's going to actually accumulate that much money to pay it back so quickly. So maybe you, in this RPG game that we're talking about, maybe you can take a loan and you can get the best axe. But now you don't really have a reputation in this town. So you're only getting these odd jobs for slaying giant rats or whatever, and that's not going to pay enough for you to actually pay the loan back. And actually, that's another thing that I wanted to mention, that if there is a loan in a game like this, I think it would have to be incorporated as like a free choice game mechanic, as you mentioned. Because the one game that's really known for having a loan system in it is Animal Crossing. But in that case, it's compulsory. So you start the game, you get your house, now you're in debt. And what it basically teaches you is that, and basically, well, you don't really have like this, there's no time limit to the debt. So there's really no problem there. So the game teaches you that being in debt is okay. And taking a loan, even though you can't pay it, is okay. And I don't really think that's like a good thing to teach anybody.
Well, on the other hand, people may be a bit too afraid of loans, because you're not gonna die when you're in debt. You're still alive.
Yeah.
And maybe it's not that bad, but there's always those who don't really get on their feet and can't even start repaying that debt. Because I've got this impression that in Sweden, people or households have these indefinite house or mortgages, house debts. They get the debt to get their house and they pay it up little by little, but no one is going to assume that you're paying that debt to its end or pay it fully.
Oh yeah, right.
And it doesn't go to their children or anything. It's just you got this loan and you can get nice house with that, and you pay up somewhat, and it's not gonna steal your lifestyle away.
Yeah.
It's just they pay like a rent. You would say it's a rent for the house.
Yeah.
And there's never an expectation that the bank gets all that money back.
Yeah. But the basic idea, if I remember correctly with that, is that you do have to pay it like every month, but you're just paying, most people are paying the minimum amount. So they're not, indeed, as you mentioned, they're not trying to pay the full amount at any point and get debt free. They're just paying the minimum amount.
But compared to Finland, you die, you have that debt still. Your father has the debt, and all the stuff is now stuck in purgatory or limbo because of that, because there are people just that you won't get away from that debt. Luckily, the people who would get the money from the deceased relative don't inheritors. They won't inherit that debt at all, but it's staying in that limbo forever and ever.
Yeah.
But if a Swedish person dies, then that debt is gone.
Yeah.
Just like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is about differences between Finland and Sweden.
Yeah.
But this is just to prove a point that loan isn't a death.
It isn't the end.
Yeah, it's not bad. Or it's in the most extreme cases it's very bad, but most of the time it's not that bad.
Yeah.
And maybe there's a bit of too much fear for the loan, getting debted or getting a loan. But yeah, this is an argument you can talk about a lot about. But
I think the bigger problem is that there's people who like, well, I guess there's too many people who have like zero fear of death, and that's the problem. You don't have that. Well,
yeah,
okay. So in the case of Animal Crossing, I guess if you are somebody who's already in debt or have a big loan, then it's like a reinforce or positive experience, because you can okay, so it's sort of the situation that I'm already in is fine, and it's fine for me to work my way up here slowly.
Yeah. We can't really get a full picture of a person because there aren't that many games that use this loaning aspect of money usage. But there are people. I can picture myself as the person who just refuses to buy anything, and I am just collecting money to get the best thing right next. I don't want to get anything in the middle. I just want to go straight to the best thing by accumulating a lot of money and suffering through those 200 hours of Skyrim gameplay like I have, using just these items I have attained from monsters, and I'm using those even though I probably could buy something better, at least armor. I could buy better armor, but I just refuse to use any money until I get enough to get a very big boost for my character.
Yeah.
And that's something that really separates people from each other, how willing they are to go to the next step in their character progression. If they want that axe that has +1 more than your previous axe, or if you are like me and want that +10 right away, and just go with that old beat up axe, those 200 hours beating bosses or enemies the cowardly way, just beat them and run away so that they ignore you, and then beat them once more.
Yeah. I mean, there is its own like satisfaction to be get from that, but I do also, because I'm sort of the same with the way I use money to enhance my characters, with the exception of some games. But I do feel that sometimes it's a bit unsatisfying that, the only character progression that we get is that, we start the game and we're super weak, and the next progression we get is that we buy the best item in the game. And that's the only time we get to feel like, we're a bit more powerful now.
And also, it's not only about the money, but in Skyrim there's also these skill trees,
or
constellations, and you get with every level you get 1 point to spend on anything, and I refuse to spend any points.
Yeah.
I'm going around with a low level character, only leveled up character, but without using any of the points, because I don't really want one perk. I want a line of perks right
Yeah.
away, and not just put one perk and then yeah. It's also about me not really knowing what I really want about from my character. I don't know where to spend it, and Skyrim doesn't have any natural way. Maybe I bet there are mods to circumvent this, but you can't pull those points out anymore.
Yeah.
And that's what has prevented me from trying out things. When there's now I remember this game Forced. We played it together, and that at least, and that is this Trine. Yeah, Trine.
Yeah.
Some of these games have this point system that you can put the points in and you can take them out and put anything, and that's very nice. I really love that. And when you have that option, I become much more daring with trying things out myself. But once there's no option to get them off, I become very protective of my resources and my points and my money when there's this point of no return feeling about it.
That's very much the same with me, except that I usually I look at the skill trees and stuff, and I see that okay, there's something that I want over there, so that seems valuable. The rest don't seem valuable. It's like plus 1% more critical hit chance. And who cares about that? I don't even know what that means. But I see that there's some okay, if I go over there, I can do a backflip. And now I'm invested. Now I know that, okay, I want to go through some route that goes there. But yeah, I really hated Diablo 2. I mean, I really like Diablo 2 for the gameplay, but I really hate the skill tree for that specific reason, because I don't remember if you can put infinite points on any, what do you even call those, like a singular perk or something.
Yeah.
Like in even in Skyrim, you have these dots that you can put, but there's a limit that you can only put 5 points into this and 2 points into the next one. But in Diablo 2, I think you can put a lot of points into any one of those. So you can put 30 points into just making into the very first perk there, and it just makes your poison arrow or whatever super strong, and now you have nothing else except that poison arrow that is super strong.
Yeah, these skill trees are very interesting now, because we are talking about money, but skill trees, there are resource management, or this, you have this something of value and you have to decide where you put it. That's what money is.
Yeah.
So in the skill tree, it's very, you see what you are getting at. You see your options and what route you have to take to get to that thing you really want. And that's something you really would benefit from in your real life as well, because that's how successful people become rich, how they start accumulating money, that they see their goal, they know how they want to start making money, and they know the steps towards that.
Yeah.
And that's like a skill tree. You have, and maybe there's some spots in there are something you really don't want to do. There's something you really don't want to have, but it's a very necessary step to get to that end goal you really want to get to. And that's a really good lesson from a game, having that kind of a roadmap for yourself.
Because I think we call that a financial plan or something similar. And the thing there is, of course, in video game, if we look at that skill tree, and what you're doing is you're playing the game, you're having fun, and now you just, putting points there is just clicking the floating orb there to put points in there. And here's the floating orb that you don't really want to put anything into, but you have to put 1 point in there to get to that one thing you want to get. But at the same time, yeah, so in real life, it is that something that you really don't want to do. Maybe it's something like you need to fire 70 employees. So or I don't know, it's something that you really, really don't want to do. It's something that takes a long time, or it's something really negative or whatever. But in game, it's just you put that one point there and you're done with it. So it's just a lot easier. And yeah, as you mentioned, it's sort of a financial plan, and the problem with that is that it's very easy to say to people that, hey, just make a financial plan and you'll fine. But there's some people who don't even have to like make a plan. All this financial stuff is so ingrained to their mind, and their mind is so attuned with that sort of thinking that they can see that plan without ever putting it into words or paper or whatever. And for some people, even if they try to think it out and try to put it on paper and whatever, they're just, I don't see how anything here connects. And that's a really big problem with people, but it is a good comparison still. Skill trees are like, a plan. It doesn't even need to be a financial plan. It can be any sort of plan. Like, in interviews, they ask you, where do you want to see yourself in 5 years?
The games make it easy because they have decided for the player that there's this path and you have to follow that path. There's no workarounds around it. Some Skyrim skill trees have some kind of circular pattern that you can go either this way or that way towards that goal.
Yeah.
So there's that, but other than that, there's always this predetermined path to take, and that's something some people really like, that someone just told them their path. That's also something not everyone is good at everything or good at making these plans. So I'm starting to think like this business person. We've been talking about this too, that there's really needs to be these two people to start a company. The other one is the businessman. He has the numbers down. They know the financial stuff. And then there's this charismatic person who can market this thing to anyone and anywhere. And together those people, they share this kind of, make this combination that can kind of go anywhere in their life, sharing these two strengths of two individuals and putting them into one company.
Yeah. The charismatic person can also be, like, you can substitute that person with somebody who has the know-how. It depends on what you're selling or what you're making.
They really needs to be that number person and that people person.
Yeah.
Or kind of innovative, crazy guy person who just really knows this is gonna be a good thing.
Yeah.
Very determined person.
Yeah.
But this is to point out that some people just really want someone by their side to become this whole that could make good financial decisions and start planning out this path. And that's so telling someone to make a financial plan is it's a good advice, but some people really need someone to help out, something like that.
Yeah, and I think from my point of view, if I look at many like successful stories that I've seen in, well, like building companies, it does feel like you always need that money person in there, of course, and then you do need somebody who is either getting that stuff and is charismatic enough to market it and so on, or somebody who makes it. Like, I guess, well, this isn't necessarily a company by itself, but if you look at Apple, for example, there's Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak, his friend. So Wozniak was the person who was like this super smart, really good at computers, really good at the stuff he was doing, and Steve was the one who was really good at marketing and the money side. So in that sense, it also feels like it's kind of stupid to ask that super smart IT guy to make a financial plan for themselves, because that's just, it's much better for them to just find that person who does that for them and then become a duo or a team or whatever. And that sort of balances out the problem. Another example that just came to mind is Ricard Garriott and his brother. I think his name was Robert. I can't be sure, but yeah, Ricard Garriott. They made these Origin systems. And Ricard was the one person who was making these games, the Ultima games. And his brother was the one who had the ability to handle the finances and everything. So it always feels like it's a team of two people like that really make a lot of sense.
Why they are successful people, and the successful people are those who have a lot of know-how about that thing they are very successful about. In the game, there's also two aspects. I'm the kind of player who really wants the game to reveal themselves to me. I don't really like cheating or looking through any manuals or walkthroughs unless it's in the very late game and I just want to collect everything that's left to collect. Then I can bring out a walkthrough or some guide to find all the rest of the collectibles.
Yeah.
But with this money thing, playing Skyrim, I hadn't looked up anything, so I don't know what the best strategy to get enough money is. I'm kind of a person who doesn't know the best route to the riches and just playing in their Skyrim land, getting money the way I know I can get money, but I don't know if that's the best way to get money, looting stuff and selling them and stuff like that. But if there's another person who, Skyrim is already over 10 years old, they've read all the manuals, they've dived deep into this game, they know every quest of this game, they have a lot of more know-how about this. If I went to that person and asked, hey, what's the best way to accumulate a lot of money, they would know that. They would tell me the best solution or a couple of solutions for my goal. And that really highlights the importance of knowledge in these sorts of things. And many other games, like Final Fantasy VI, is very scrutinized. Everyone already knows the code side of stuff. We really utilize those facts during our gameplay some years ago.
Yeah, making the best of the game.
Yeah. And if we hadn't done that, the experience might have been a bit more miserable, I think. But when you know where to go and what to do and what not to do, not put your mind into, then there's a lot better experience in Final Fantasy VI or any other game. But everyone touts Final Fantasy VI or 3 in America as this very nice, beautiful, nice game that's very full on story and everyone loves it. But I'm a little bit skeptical about that. It is a good game. I really dig that, but there are a lot of bugs and a lot of stuff that's very bad in that game. But when you've been in a community that has kind of dug deep into that game and solved stuff that you might never come across ever in your playthrough, then just trying to prove my point or get to this point that knowledge is knowledge plays a big part in any game. And I'm a kind of person who really wants to not know anything about game, especially a game I'm really interested about. And that might be detrimental in some cases, but I really want to be surprised and wowed by these games and game experiences. I don't want to be spoiled. But on the other hand, successful people would devour or inhale everything that is out there about this game. And they would know these best and most satisfactory ways to play the game through.
I can actually see that. I actually have a real life example of how I can see that same mentality in you in real life, because we have a webcomic that we do, and Bayandil is the one who draws it. And there are sometimes I have a very specific vision about what I'm hoping for our next comic strip to contain, and what I usually do is I dig an image or something for you, and I'm just, this is what I'm imagining it to be, so, just draw this. And you're like, no, I don't want to look at that. So
Yeah.
I guess that goes with the real life, in that, very successful people are those who they're not afraid to steal and ask for a lot of advice from a lot of sources. And both of us, but more specifically you, are the sort of person who really just wants to do everything by themselves and not really take advantage of the knowledge or anything else that feels sort of like cheatish in real life.
One exception is that if I specifically know what I want and I'm struggling to imagine how to do it, then if it's very specific, then I might go to check how some other comic might have done it. But if there's a big image that I need I don't really want to make, because I used to be like that as a child. I had a friend who drew in class. We drew pictures, and she drew a picture and I copied her. I was that copycat person who always, I had no ideas of my own. I drew something that my friend drew, and I don't know how that happened, but somehow I just became the opposite of that. I really want to make things for my own, but I think I've softened a bit in that I really can accept help also, but it really needs to be on my terms.
Yeah.
And this is about money. But it ties into money in that way that I really feel like I want to deserve my money. It's that middle class personality type of, I want to earn my money by working hard, and not necessarily being that who throws money at stuff and it starts spitting money at me.
Yeah.
I really actually like to be that person, but it requires me to start researching stuff that's not been very natural part of my life at all. I really need to take some courses or start to, and that's one caveat or problem, that if you want to become financially successful, or if I wanted to become, I really don't know where to start, because it's in a different realm of expertise than I'm used to.
Something I noticed from a lot of, well, I wouldn't say rich people, but people that are pretty well off financially, is that, first of all, as we talked about games, these are the people who aren't like afraid to be sneaky, and they're not afraid to be ruthless about the things that they're doing. And that's kind of a problem with both of our types of personalities, in that we don't really, we can maybe we can see that, okay, there's a shortcut, but it would require us to be what we consider evil, and we just can't wrap our heads around the fact that we could do that and not suffer any repercussions. Whereas these sneaky people can very much see that, okay, I can get a lot of money from there, but I need to do something that is kind of evil, but it's not actually something that I'm going to suffer any repercussions from, so I'm going to go there. And for us, it's unthinkable that you could do that and not suffer any repercussions. Unless, of course, it's in a video game, because within a video game, you can sort of understand that, it's all NPCs around you. So even if you do kill somebody and steal their money, that's just an NPC, and it's just in the gaming world, and there are these very specific rules that that I killed that NPC in this place, so nobody has programmed anything in the game to make anybody check that or find that body there or anything. But in real life, there's just so many variables, and I guess in that sense, so it feels like you can't be sure that you're not going to suffer any repercussions from doing something somewhat bad.
Yeah, and we're coming to the ethics aspect of this. Getting money from people, because in a game you don't have to care about anything. Some people are more empathical and they will get the same feels from killing an NPC. But it's much easier to be something you are not, and not be sad about making someone else sad in a game, because it's a game. There's no one to make sad or cause harm to. But once you get into the real life, these social aspects and ethics come into play. And that's a really interesting thing. I'd really like to see some research, even how a person changes depending on if they have their ethics stripped in the form of playing a game, as opposed to going into the real world and interacting there.
Yeah.
How much those ethics play a part in people not wanting to become successful because they see ethical problems in the solutions they think there is to start making more money.
Yeah. I think Kingdom Come Deliverance is, I guess, another good example of all sort of situations like that. It just, there's so many thoughts I could talk about that game that I'm sort of confused right now, but start from the fact that at some point in the game, like the way you can make money in that game, or the way I found making money in that game, at some point you have so much money in the game that you're actually probably richer than any of the lords in the game. And it's based on a time where that's just like, in reality there wouldn't be that much money in circulation at else, but it's a game, so it's just a number there showing how much money you have. So you have like 200,000 groschen in your bag all the time. And in reality it would be like this massive bag that you're basically carrying, like you're like Atlas, you're carrying the entire earth on your back. But yeah, you just go around and the lords are talking to you like you're some
peasant.
Yeah, you're some peasant who doesn't have a groschen on his name, and kind of strange. But yeah, there are many situations there where you can basically, the situation is something like you're in some sort of village, and it's sort of a poor village, but you helped save them from the plague or something like that. You really did them a favor, and they say that we don't have much, but we scrounge like this amount of money from our town to give to you. And now as a player, I know that there's no repercussions to taking that money. It's not going to affect the game in any way, but it's still, to me, it feels like, I know how to make money in this game, so I'm not going to take that. So there are situations like that, and that's something I've noticed in a lot of games, in that if I don't really know where the line goes, but there's some sort of threshold in there, especially if I'm playing if I'm playing games like Mass Effect, where it's very clear that you have three options, which is one is the Paragon route, and one is the neutral route, and one is the Renegade route. So there's like good, neutral, and bad. I'm always taking the good option because that's my ideal fantasy. That's my, what is it, like a power fantasy, so to say, to be good. And that's why that's the route I take unless I'm really at the start of the game and I really appreciate the fact that I can get some money and now I can buy maybe some armor with it.
But it's a very safe space either way to be evil or good in the game.
Yeah.
The ethics part is, the games could really teach you about how ethics or your perceived ethics hinder you from achieving stuff. Because when you start thinking about investing in stocks, I had this problem also in the beginning but when I buy the stocks, if I buy the stocks at lower price and then I sell them, then there's someone who buys those stocks. And then they're kind of screwed because they bought them at a bigger price and I got the profit from it.
Yeah.
You can start seeing ethics in everything, but you really need to understand that acquiring any money at all, even in the middle class, working hard to gain your money, you're stealing money from your company. You're transferring money from the company to yourself. And that's also, that's money. Well, nowadays they're printing money, but they are lowering that printing frequency right now. But yeah, money is finite and it always circulates around. You give money to someone and they will give it to someone else, and you get money from your company you work with. They've gotten that money from someone else buying their product. So it's always about this money going to someone in the end, and always. So I think some people, including me, used to have this a little bit too much ethics in their head about money. Because if you start worrying about that someone is gonna suffer because you got pay raise by being a bit more aggressive in the salary negotiations, then you really shouldn't be worried about that. Because it's a reality that you need to be a little bit selfish also to look out for yourself and your loved ones, to get them the ideal quality of life you'd really want to give them. So maybe games could be a good tool to break those unnecessary ethics. Some kind of, you can, in this safe environment, experience how you could be a little bit more selfish. And it might be very okay to be a bit more selfish, and games could be this kind of medium to start working on that.
Yeah, I think there's at least 2 points I want to make from what you said. Is that, first of all, it's very important to think of not money as stealing, but it's always an exchange for something or another.
Yeah.
It
Except
actually
the straight up stealing, of course. But
it actually, it reminded me of a character in Kingdom Come Deliverance where there's this charlatan. He asks you to take what are those prayer beads from people, and then the main character, what, do you want me to steal them? And he's like, no, I would never such a thing. I simply wish for you to exchange them for nothing.
yeah.
But yeah, you mentioned that like, even if you're working in the middle class, you're sort of stealing from your company. But in a sense, like, it is an exchange. You're exchanging your time, whatever it is, your
Expertise.
expertise for that money. And here's the kicker, I think, in that regarding the stock market example that you had before. You bought the stocks when they were low, and somebody bought them when they were high, and so you know that they got screwed. But in this company's case, you know, you're getting money from the company, but you don't really you're not seeing the stocks, so you don't really know if the company is screwing you or if you're screwing the company necessarily. It may be either way around. Either the company is paying you too much for your time, or it's paying you too little, and so one of you is getting sort of screwed. But the most important thing is that things are happening, and you are getting paid some amount of money, and the company is getting some amount of work done. So yeah, so what I'm trying to say is that the ethics side of it, that yeah, you shouldn't get stuck in thinking that, you know, I don't want to screw anybody, and I don't want to be screwed because somebody is going to be screwed, because sort of the equivalent exchange is, unless we're talking about straight up alchemy or whatever, then it's never going to be like the same. You're never going to get like the exact amount that you should earn from your work. You're always getting a bit less or more.
That the successful people are those who know how to get that more, how to screw that company or screw others, and that's a very sad reality, but it is what it is. Companies, they are their main reason of existence is to make profit, and if they have to kick out a few people, a few employees to keep that profit coming or keep the company itself alive, to save, let's say, 2,000 other employees. Maybe it's even that dire situation in a company that you really need to kick out certain amount of people to keep this Y amount of people employed. So there's really never kind of this black and white when you are really screwing someone with money and when you are not, because, and even if you let people go because of financial situation, those people are now in the free market, and some might fall out of the society. And that's a very sad thing, but most of them will be fine. They will find a new job somewhere else, or maybe that's something they really needed, like this COVID virus also. It halted the world for a while, and many people got kicked out of their jobs, and I'd say many people benefited from jumping out of that wheel. We call it the squirrel's wheel, this place this status quo you keep living in.
Yeah, you just keep grinding the same old stuff.
Yeah. So even if you think something is bad, it might actually become a good outcome in the end. So thinking about these ethics is, you really need to keep those in check in some way and try to think of a bigger picture.
Yeah.
Or beyond that bad thing happening, because a kicked out employee might become a very important employee in somewhere else, or they might make a life change that improves their lives. It's not black and white.
Yeah. It's so much depends on the situation, and I mean, of course, there are those companies that have this problem that, you know, they're kicking out these 70 people, and it's not going to ensure these 200 people staying there. It's just going to ensure that this boss person can keep getting higher salary. So of course that's the worst side of it.
Yeah.
But there are different situations, of course, like in some cultures and some circles, people believe that, you know, this stuff that I don't remember how the exact like proverb goes, but sort of like throw a baby to a lion's den. at their birth, and if that baby survives it, then it's worth raising as a human being. So sometimes we need to. Sometimes it's good for certain people to be thrown. That's where they become stronger and they get away from that thing that they tried to hold on like so much, even though it wasn't good for them. But at the same time, for some people, throwing them into that situation can just be purely negative. So it really, once again, it depends on the person and the situation and everything.
Once again, we're coming back to games. We can still tie this into money and games, because games, as well as movies, books, anything fictional we like to consume in our free time, all that kind of prepares us for stuff we might encounter in our lives. And I think games are the best kind of media to consume, because that's something you interact with and you make decisions in, and you are very, very safe to make very bad decisions. And it trains you to take risks and also make mistakes in a safe environment where you get this feedback. Okay, I made a mistake. Sometimes it's just you die in a level and you have to start again. Then you have to think, how do I make it through this level without dying? Games are very powerful in training people to take in these impacts and this negative feedback without this social anxiety inducing feelings of everyone seeing you failing or anything else like that. And that's also part of handling money, to this, how much risk you want to take and how you can train yourself to withstand a bit of risk for a bigger gain in the future.
And that ties with what we talked about quite a long time ago now. In that, the reason in a game, I don't really want to see the Animal Crossing route where you just have a loan whether you want it or not. I do want to see it as an option, because it does sort of train you that, it's fine to try out that option, and then maybe you fail, maybe you get a game over, or the game becomes unplayable because of that. But then you can retry, and now you can try a different strategy. So it's sort of like it's a condensed simulation about something that could happen in real life. And you can, instead of taking a loan in real life and now you're stuck with it, you can just try that out in a video game, and in a couple of days you can see whether it was a good decision for you or not.
Yeah, because most big risks people could take is a loan and you pay it up for 30 years. And that's a very long time, so it's very important to have these interactive experiences that games are, that let you have this very quick way of experiencing something that might take you 20, 30 years in real life. So kind of experience it and realize, oh, this is gonna be the outcome. Maybe now I can see my future in 30 years. Maybe that loan will be very beneficial for my company or my goal in my life.
Or even if not, then at least you can see, like in the game, you can see that, I took out a loan and it all worked out very well. But now if you contrast it to real life, if I take a loan, do I see myself, like, what do I see 30 years from now? And you realize that, the game gave you these tools to be successful and to make it there. And you don't see how that could happen in real life. And now you hopefully immediately understand that, I'm missing something. So I shouldn't take that loan. Not unless I figure out these things. And if I don't put the effort and if I don't put the time into it, figure out those things, then it's better to just not take the loan, because I'm going to need those tools to make it there.
Yeah. That's a nice thought.
Yeah. So it all I guess the troublesome part is that it all does boil down to like understanding how we can use these, and not just playing video games, but also understanding that if you're using something in there as a simulation, that what are the paths that you have and what are the things that you're missing. And it does also sort of tie in. We actually talked about this somewhat recently at my workplace. If you're familiar with any like task-based systems like to-do lists or what was it, like Pomodoro method and like Scrum Agile methods and stuff like that. Basically, like working systems where you splice your things you need to do into small tasks. Then the big problem in real life is that you need to actually put the time and effort to make those tasks, as opposed to video games where if you start World of Warcraft, you're going to have this quest log, and the quest log will, as soon as you speak with some NPCs, it's just going to show you those quests, and you don't actually have to write them down by yourself. So it's a lot easier sort of populating your quest log with those tasks, as opposed to in real life you have to actually put a lot of effort, not just into making those tasks, but making sure that they are the right size. They are not just something that's going to be there forever ever because it's something that's too big or something that you really don't want to touch.
Yeah. But the thing is, even in the World of Warcraft, someone made those tasks, and it was the game developers.
Yeah.
So in your workplace, there's this person who needs to be the expert of that stuff and make those tasks. And in the case of individuals, this could be some life skill people should be taught in schools. At least the basics of it. And there have been in the
Senior high school,
and there we had this financial course, which was pretty little, just a few hours per week for 1 or 2 years. It wasn't that much, or was it even that? But very little, the financial course.
I don't think we had any of that.
There were 1 or 2
Okay.
mandatory or obligatory. You had to go those courses in my time at least.
Yeah.
But it's in a school that's not compulsory to everyone. That's you from your, is it elementary school?
Yeah.
From elementary school, you make a choice between essentially 2 styles of schools, and this senior high school is where some people go and the others don't necessarily get this course. And even for us, that course was kind of lacking when you think about it now, almost 20 years later, now 15 years later. And I really think that these kinds of courses need to be implemented as a game and in elementary school, because kids like games and it needs to be a good game. But even militaries use VR games to train for very serious tank formations and dealing with enemies. So why not elementary schoolers use games to sort of start learning these life skills that are very important in your later life. And I'm not talking about these educational games that are very boring and no one really wants to click on those quizzes.
And actually good games, actually properly made games.
I'd say make it the schoolers or the school kids play Zoo Tycoon, because as I said in the beginning, that it really lets you play with the money and see the consequences. I actually didn't talk about this in this video, that when I first started playing Zoo Tycoon, and my brother also, our style of play was to build anything we wanted all the time, not thinking about costs
Yeah.
or anything like that, and profits, and add them up and see if it's on the positive side or the negative side of the profit margin. So most or in the beginning, all our games ended in a bankruptcy because we just kept building stuff. And once a year was over, all those expenses crashed down upon us, and we were in millions of debt in the end. And that really taught us that, yeah, you can build anything you want, but it's gonna come bite you in the ass later on.
Yeah.
And that's very important lesson, really, when you think about people using credit and taking loans just like that very easily. And this Zoo Tycoon was this condensed experience of taking that loan and feeling the consequences later on, not immediately, because that's an easy thing to learn, but later on you get this, why am I minus 3 million suddenly? And when you start thinking about it, you understand, oh, you had bills to pay.
Yeah, I think that's actually something that I think games should incorporate more, like long-term consequences. Because, from a gameplay standpoint, I understand that they suck. I remember, what was the game? Banner Saga, which we played a long time ago. Without spoiling anything that happens in the game, there are some decisions that you need to make in that game, and they can have like really long-term consequences, like you pick up a certain person with you and that person ends up backstabbing you or something like that. And it happens, the part where you choose to take this person and the part where they backstab you or something like that, like they happen so far away from each other that there's no way you're gonna think, okay, I'm just gonna reload the last save and just gonna revert that back, because you at that point you might as well start from the beginning of the game, more or less. The good side about that is that I really remember like those situations, and the consequences are really vividly in my mind, and I do carry that memory with me to like more or less every decision in my life. And you do as well, that story about Zoo Tycoon. So in that sense, I do think that's important. And also the another important thing is like showing you what was the error that you made, or sort of, I mean, I guess it's not necessarily that like understandable in real life as well, but it's really nice to know like what mistakes you made, what was the reason that you lost against someone, or because there are some games like there's a game called Banished, where it's like a village managing simulator basically, and at some point your village just starts to fall apart and you don't necessarily understand why. You've just been building it and everything's been going fine, and then for some reason it just starts falling apart, and you don't really understand that there are a lot of intricacies, like maybe there's somebody working at the other side of the village and their workplace is at the other side, and the way the time works, they start walking there, and by the time they're about to reach the work, they're ravenously hungry and they start to walk back to their home and they perish in the on the way or something like that. And it's just things like that add up, or maybe there's like a bad year of crops and suddenly it's not enough to feed everybody, and stuff like that happening, and you don't necessarily understand why. But it's also games like that, sort of you fail and you don't understand why, and hopefully because it's just a simulation, it's not real life, it's not something that's actually really really bad for your life, then you do a little bit of research of what actually happened, hopefully. And especially I do like games like World of Warcraft have like the you do need to understand that there's a separate like combat log that shows you like what happened in the game. So if you died, if you go and look at the combat log, maybe you can understand that, okay, so what happened was that I was fighting an enemy and I was getting low on health and I tried to run away, and then the opponent just had this skill that I had no idea called backstab. And now that my back is turned against the opponent as I'm running away, then they're actually doing like triple damage to me. And the combat log then can show that to you, but you do need to actually realize that there is that combat log and go there and do that research.
Yeah. This is a lesson about games being very useful at making people grow up into more competent people in real life.
Hopefully.
Yeah, because there's a lot of stigma about games and people gaming, and even especially children playing too much. But the more we've been talking about this and we've been playing games, I just realized how much the games themselves have taught me. I'm very, at least as a child and teenager, I was a very introverted, and I am still now, but a person who really didn't like to hang out with friends outside of school and stuff like that. So for people like that, their life experiences, they are very limited. So I'm glad I had games that could teach those stuff to me. Without going outside and going out of my comfort zone, without going out from my personality. My personality drew me to stay at home and play games and do stuff I really like, and socializing with people wasn't something I liked. And games can really help that kind of person to get these life lessons. And I could, or I would argue that they are even better than hanging out with people that are the same age as you, so you are all very idiots as teenagers. They're not teaching really anything but social skills with each other, but life lessons, how to handle your money, not unless there's this person who's really interested in finances or stock market.
Or the other way around, if you have a friend who's really bad with money, then you can get experiences from that, seeing that person handle that money so poorly. And actually, I did learn to never loan money to people back in junior high school, because there were just these people that they wouldn't loan a lot of money. It was like a couple of euros at a time, but they would never pay it back. And that sort of taught me to, never trust people. But then again, that could have been sort of a bad thing to learn as well, because I mean, as far as I understood, there are a lot of people who make a lot of money by lending money to a lot of people, and it's not really about that lending is good or bad. It depends on the person. If you're lending money to the right person, then you're gonna get it back, and you're gonna get it back with interest, whether that interest is more money or services or favors or whatever. But that's the thing you need to watch out for. To wrap this up, there is one thing, and because there's a lot of games that center around money uses. There's games like Port Royal, where the idea is that you are managing a whole fleet of ships and just doing mostly trading and everything. But at the same time, I do sort of feel that I would like this sort of element to be much stronger in like these mainstream RPG games that more people are getting to play into. Because that would force people who wouldn't normally, because even I don't know how much I've been playing Port Royal 3 now, but even I don't find it super interesting. I would more or less rather be playing some RPG, honestly. But you don't sort of find those kind of systems in those kind of games, and that means that a lot of people are missing them. So in that sense, I would like to see like some sort of RPGs where if you don't manage your money well, then it does mean that you go on the negative side and you're actually in debt, and life is sort of not all that good for you. And of course that you could redeem from that situation, but it would require a lot more work or something.
Oh, here's a topic of video.
Yeah.
Let's figure out this kind of money system into a game.
Yeah,
The way we figured out this food system mechanics.
that's the topic of our... I don't know if it's the next video, but for another video. So we're Geralf and Vajandil, and hope you got something out of our little discussion.
Leave some comments if you have some insight about this. How maybe a game taught you something about handling money.
How do you manage your resources?
Did you become a successful person because of a game? We really like to hear that story.
Yeah, I mean, probably not, but also, did you become an unsuccessful person because of games? We'd like to know that as well.
Yeah.
Either way, thank you for listening or watching. Bye bye.
Bye bye.